Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Beyond the Trailer Park. Got full house this evening, and one of our guests is a little short on time, so we'll keep the banter to a minimum for the first little bit. But all the way from Pennsylvania, as usual, good evening, Beth.
Howdy, howdy.
And from maybe not going to get hit by a hurricane land in Mississippi, good evening, Morgan.
Good evening. Well, I got Trump to cancel his rally on Friday, so
Oh, sweet.
or he's saying that's why, even though it's not. Looks like it's not heading this way, but
Hey, you'll take it, right?
Yeah, I'll take it.
You mean that landmass thing?
Yes.
Yeah, the landmass between Mobile and New Orleans. That's where I live.
Well, at least Canada knows where you are.
Yes, but they know better than the rest of the country.
And our roving YouTube atheist friend of Holy Koolaid, because I never know what state you're in these days. Good evening, Thomas.
Hello.
And look, Thomas has the coolest avatar ever. It actually moves like he does.
Yeah, so he'll blink and raise his eyebrows and talk when I talk based off the audio. And I haven't done a whole lot yet. I can make the animation more complex. Right now I just have stretchy arms that I'm like Mr. Elastic over here and just drag him around.
Awesome. And the cats are a great touch too.
Thanks.
And over from the I don't know how wild Peterborough is, but my neck of the woods, a friend of mine. Good evening, Scott.
Good evening, folks. How are you?
Or as your title says, the God Baal.
The what?
Yeah, it says you're Baal.
Oh, yeah, the ball buster.
Yeah.
That's actually from an old radio
buster. Oh, there you go.
That's from the Bail Buster radio show at Trent University, a talk show I used to have.
Oh, okay. I missed the buster part. I just was would say Scott, and I looked down and it says it's Bail. Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Bail, but you can call me the ball buster.
Okay, Mr. Ballbuster. We'll get back to Scott in a minute, but Thomas doesn't have a huge amount of time this evening, so we'll probably just get right to it. And now we've talked, I know we did a whole show about the whole Catholic sex abuse scandal in Pennsylvania and all of that, but it's kind of blowing up, and we're all a little pleased about where things are going. But Thomas, we were talking a little bit about that before the show, but if you want to fill us in on some of the happenings that have been going on, and then we'll get to what it is that you've started to do about it.
Oh yeah, so as most of you are already aware, last month in August, around the middle of the month, the grand jury in Pennsylvania released a report that took them 2 years to compile that exposed over 1,000 cases of abuse at the hands of over 300 priests. And these reports came from the Catholic Church's own records, as well as they verified them with testimony by people who were abused by priests. And it showed that just the massive scale of this abuse that was going on. It happened for over 70 years, and this was in only 6 dioceses. There's 8 dioceses in Pennsylvania. And to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at here, every single place around the world, whether it's a country or a state or what have you, that has been investigated, there has been scandal that's been found. There's been sex abuse at the hands of priests, and there's been massive cover-up. And right now, there are 3,160 ecclesiastical jurisdictions worldwide. This 1,000 abuse cases happened in just 6 of them. So if you do the math, you can kind of start to get an idea of just how massive of a scale that we're dealing with. And the types of events that happened ranged from, groping to all-out rape to sometimes, beating and massive physical abuse. Some of the priests would mark their victims who had been groomed for abuse, who were easy pickings, with gold crosses so that other priests would know which ones to target. This really has been, it's been going on for decades, and it's been reported all the way up to, the top cardinals and even the Pope. They've paid out over $3.8 billion since the 1980s to try to, in either legal fees or, sometimes they'll pay off their victims to keep them silent. and to keep them from speaking up. It's just horrific stuff. And the more that I looked into it, the more I started to realize that, like, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Like, Boston revealed a massive scandal. There's been scandals in Chile. There were over 80 priests there that were found to be abusive. There's been scandals in Australia. And time again, the people involved, like, when they find out, oh my God, it goes all the way up to, Cardinal Law in Boston or Cardinal Pell in Australia. Like, these people not only knew about it, but they covered it up. Cardinal McCarrick, Cardinal Mahoney. Like, this is the top level of the Catholic Church that has known about it and has covered it up. And when they find that out, instead of just defrocking them and instead of turning them over to the authorities, oftentimes they either get sent back to the Vatican. They don't have to face the music. They get to just avoid the scandal altogether. And sometimes, like in the case of Bernard Law, he got to go and vote in conclave to elect the next pope. Like, this is the highest of the high, level that he's being promoted to. And it's, these are people who are covering up the most heinous crimes and at the same time claiming the moral high ground.
Yep. Oh, it's pathetic. And we've just noticed this week, and I know Scott was tracking it in his Facebook group, that now it's finally, like, I don't know why this didn't happen after Spotlight, which was 17 fucking years ago, but there now other states are coming out and saying we're going to investigate the church with a grand jury as well. Finally.
Yeah. And we were talking about this a little bit before the show, but Missouri, I believe, New York, and you said 7 other states right now are looking into it. Yeah. What I'm hoping for is that within the next year or two, that every single state investigates and looks into the Catholic Church, and that not just in the US, but that as the scale of this really starts to unfold, that this becomes a global investigation, and that hopefully people wise up a little bit as to where they're giving their money, and that they stop supporting a organization that's covering up massive abuse.
Well, it's like I said before we went live, is that at the bare minimum, okay, worldwide, we are talking bare minimum 15,000 priests.
Wow.
Okay. 59% of the money you donate via fundraiser or through your tithing to the church is going to defend these priests. And in the last 50 years, as Deb mentioned, over $4 billion has been spent to pay off, in some cases, literally pay off victims.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was just in the U.S. alone, it was 3.8 billion since the 80s. Yeah, so like it's got to be a lot more than that.
So you're talking bare minimum 100 million or 100 billion worldwide that's being spent.
Yeah.
So
well, I don't know the total numbers, but just the fact that they would even spend, a few hundred million. And this isn't just to, pay for damages and stuff, which they should be doing. Oftentimes what we'll see is that, like in the case of Pennsylvania, there was one woman who she went to the cops and they said, we don't want to hear about it. Don't tell us the name. Like, they didn't want to be involved because they were in many cases Catholic themselves, and they didn't want there to be a scandal. And then the Catholic Church, when she would go and report it within the Catholic hierarchy, then they would look the other way. And they'd say, oh, you got to repent. And it's disgusting. But then what she found out later was that when she started to try to press charges and she found out that she was past the statute of limitations and couldn't press charges anymore, which oftentimes it takes years for survivors of abuse to come forward. They're oftentimes shamed and they're told that it's their fault and they're made to feel guilty. And then when they finally get up the courage to go to the authorities, they realize that it's past the statute of limitations. Well, she found out when she was trying to sue the Catholic Church that they actually, instead of spending money to investigate the priests and the rapists, then they spent money to open an investigation on her and hire a private investigator to look into her past and dig up dirt on her and her daughter.
Yeah.
So it's just disgusting.
What does her daughter have to do with it even?
That's part of their MO, though, and why the Catholic Church has been so adamant fighting any changes in statute of limitation. In fact, the Catholic Church, via the Catholic League, i.e. Bill Donahue, he actually, when the statute was defeated in New York in 2016, actually celebrated. I mean, he wrote this news release, press release, basically gloating about the defeat. And this is what they do, is they throw in these roadblocks. You know, you have possibly Catholic police to get you past that statute of limitations, so you can't press charges. And this is what your money as a parishioner is going to. So there are no, you cannot say, well, I don't support it. Yes, you do, if you tithe to the church, because that money is going to support their actions.
And to me, the most disgusting part of it all is that when they're caught and when they actually can be held to some sort of accountability and they're told, you need to pay reparations to these victims, you need to pay for therapy and aid to these victims, they do every fucking thing they can to avoid doing that. Like everything. And I mean, I was rewatching The Keepers a couple of weeks ago. And if anybody has not watched that yet, it's on Netflix. I highly recommend it. One of the victims there said, you know, this is years and years later, the church finally said, oh, well, we'll offer you know 2 years of therapy to pay for you. And she's like, at this point, I'd been in therapy for 12 years already. I was like, oh, gee, thanks. Yeah. Like, that to me is the most disgusting thing, which to me is why what you're doing, Thomas, I think is super important. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so you mentioned Bill Donahue a second ago, and as I was investigating, you know, kind of the scale of this problem and making, you know, I put out a couple videos on Holy Koolaid about it. The first one showed the scale of it. The second one was I started looking at the Catholic Church's response. And you have, on the one hand, you have people like the Pope who's coming out and at least he's acknowledging that, like, oh, hey, there's a problem. This is awful. Now, he's known about it for decades. He hasn't done anything. This is the one person who has the sole authority, the sole, you know, 100% power. He's completely in charge of the Vatican, which is both a nation and the head of the church. And he could change it in a heartbeat. And yet he gives no actionable you know, guidance as to, oh, what are we going to do? You know, are we going to actually enforce a zero tolerance policy? Are we actually going to turn them over to the authorities, open up our books and show all the different cases that we've been hiding, you know, all of our records and stuff? No, he doesn't. And so what it's left up to is you have thousands of survivors all around the world who feel completely alone, that have to come together, band together, and take action as a group to take on this multi-billion-dollar Catholic Church. And so what I found was that the level of not just while even the Pope is apologizing, you have like the president of the Catholic League, Bill Donahue, is coming out. He's making excuses. He's throwing a smokescreen. He's trying to say, oh, well, why don't you go after the public schools? Why are you singling us out? You know, even though there's proof, there's a smoking gun that his church has been covering up child rape for decades. And he blames it on the gays. He calls it a homosexual agenda, or homosexual subculture, sorry. And then he'll target organizations like SNAP, which is actually giving resources to survivors of sex abuse, trying to give them resources to heal as well as to get justice. And he calls it a phony victims group. Mm-hmm. And so just like when I saw that, like that got my blood boiling. And I was like, you know what we can do? We can put together a fundraiser as atheists that will raise money for SNAP, for survivors of sex abuse by clergy, and try to come out in droves and show them that we support them. You know, not all of them are atheists. Many of them, you know, may still be Catholic, or, you know, whatever religious denomination they adhere to, but they're still suffering at the hands of clergy. And I think that the least we can do is show them that we care about justice. We care about hopefully seeing some of these clergy come to trial, as well as expose cases, give an opportunity. Snap, their website lets people tell their stories. It lets them come forth and share what's happened to them, let them be heard, as well as they have resources right now to call for grand jury investigations in your state. And so they're sending out, basically you can go on there and you can write a letter to they have a template you can copy and send to your attorney general in your state to call for an investigation into your state's Catholic Church. And so all of this stuff that they're doing, it's great work. And so I put together on GoFundMe a fundraiser. We've raised right now $2,674, and I have the goal set right now at $5,000, and that's just been in the last 10 days or so. And it is completely transparent. I do not see a dime of it because SNAP is a registered, recognized charity within GoFundMe. It is a 501c3. All your donations are tax deductible. So it goes directly from GoFundMe to SNAP. And they have, I believe it's GuideStar that looks into, investigates charities to make sure, if they're transparent or not. And they were awarded a silver star for transparency. And so, as far as donations go, I wanted to make sure that it was one that people could trust, people could give to, and that they knew that their money was actually going to a good cause and that it would actually be used effectively.
Well, what's important to realize about SNAP too, and about any of these cases, whether they are civil or criminal, is that the time of involved by the attorneys. Now, a lot of people, there are some, for lack of better wording, class action type lawsuits against certain churches or certain priests. The amount of research that SNAP and SNAP associated lawyers or lawyers associated with the cases that aren't affiliated with SNAP have to put into these cases is enormous. And a lot of times why these cases do not come to light is because people can't afford it. And I think by being able to donate, and I'll throw this caveat in here, I am a very huge supporter of SNAP. I have been for 8 years now. One of the tactics, and we had mentioned the Catholic Church does use, is they stall. And they will stall until the statute of limitations completely runs out, and then you're stuck with a civil case, which it has some power, but not as much. So the money involved for victims is enormous, and donating, I think, will alleviate some of the issue. I mean, we all know it costs money to do stuff.
Well, and at the same time, if we can help raise more exposure for SNAP, then the bigger that this group gets, the more exposure they get on social media, in the press. Oftentimes when there are scandals like this, then SNAP is a reliable source because they've been around for decades. They're a legitimate organization, and they're usually the first one that the press goes to talk to about cases like this.
Well,
so they're giving a face and a voice to survivors.
Yes.
Well, I think what's important too is that SNAP is usually, not always, but usually from my experience, the first ones to put out any type of statement in support of victims who take that step to come forward. And they don't just offer legal advice. They're there as a support system as well. And that's how Kathy set it up originally, and she just recently passed away, Kathy Shaw, who is the founder of SNAP. Not the whole shebang, but she was very...
What I'm doing with the fundraiser is I'm not just raising the money to give to SNAP. At the very end of it, I was already kind of planning to raise money to help the abuse survivors. But then when I saw Bill Donahue basically calling it a phony victims group and blaming the abuse on, a homosexual subculture, making excuse after excuse, I was like, you know what? Why not make the donation basically courtesy of Bill Donahue? Just watch the look on his face when he finds out that a bunch of atheists just donated $10,000 or $5,000 in his name to an organization that's bringing down his beloved Catholic Church. So
That's almost as good as when people donate to Planned Parenthood in Pence's name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
For
So
sure.
anyways, if anyone watching wants to be a part of this, wants to share it, like if you're able to donate, that would be awesome. If you're able to donate and share, that's doubly awesome. And if you're not able to afford to make a donation, at least share it on Facebook or Twitter. You don't have to be an atheist. You don't have to be, anti-Catholic. But if you care about people who have been victims of sex abuse or survivors of sex abuse, then, go and share this and try to get them as much support as we can. And
Well, something you had mentioned that, and I mention this anytime I talk about this issue, is this SNAP doesn't just do Roman Catholicism abuse victims. SNAP is there for all. So if you're Jehovah Witnesses, which we have mentioned, if you are Mormon, which was 2 weeks ago we talked about it.
Yep. Even Scientologist, for that matter.
I mean, and they also do to combat Bill's whataboutism. They do also work with victims that have been abused by school teachers.
Yes.
So, my problem that I have with the abuses within the church, not just the Roman Catholic Church, is that they claim a higher moral ground. And where Bill's whataboutism fails is that public schools and, quote, Hollywood do not claim that.
Yeah.
Religion does. And that's why I fight against it more, more publicly.
They're showing that no matter how much we're told that we are, awful, that we have no moral standard, no matter how much they denigrate atheists from the pulpit,
you can't say anything's bad.
The circumstances are showing that the emperor has no clothes. Mm-hmm. So on that note, I do have to run. I've got another stream I'm hopping into, but thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
And that's a GoFundMe is where you can.
Yeah. GoFundMe.com/fundraiser-4-snap. So GoFundMe.com/fundraiser-4-snap.
All right. And of course, check out Thomas over on Holy Koolaid on YouTube. We do have that linked in the show description too. So you can
awesome
over and see his videos. So, well, thank you for dropping by. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. I'm sending you the link in the group chat. If you want to post that in YouTube as well, then that would be wonderful. So take care, guys. Have a wonderful day.
Great. Thanks, Thomas.
Just to reiterate about Bill Donahue, the other day I did a quote meme. Catholic League, which is Bill Donahue's organization, posted a meme, deceit, truth, and this is the text of the meme. Why would the public think the church has a problem with predator priests? That's exactly the perception given by many news outlets. And then he goes on, what the public is not told is that Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro has admitted that only 2 of the 301 accused men mentioned in the grand jury report could be prosecuted under the statute of limitations. 2, because almost all of the alleged cases occurred in the last century. Yet the public think this problem is ongoing. And then he cites the John Jay study from 2002, established by the bishops, the work they've done in the past 2 years for which we have data is 0.005% of the clergy have a credible accusation made against them. Now, 2 weeks ago, a couple days after the AG report came out, Kevin Lonergan was, who most recently served as pastor in a Pennsylvania Catholic church in Allentown, was charged with groping a 17-year-old girl and sending her nude pictures of himself. Yeah, this is an ongoing problem, Bill.
And to say in the last century, okay, that's only 20 years, buddy.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's I'm actually in the midst of writing a blog post about this specific meme because I got a little pushback on it. But
well, what he's hoping for is that most people over the age of 20 think of last century as the 19th century still.
Exactly. And his
And then also statute of limitations, and also he's talking about criminal statute of limitations. There is still a civil statute of limitations, but usually it'll be longer.
Yes.
Depending on your jurisdiction. But yeah, and he's counting on that. He's not saying, oh, it didn't happen, but only 2 can be prosecuted, which is very, very specific. Like only 2 fall within the criminal statute of limitations, which hasn't been extended because of his efforts.
And he's making it sound like, oh, out of all these accusations, only 2 were credible. That's what
That's too many.
He's playing on words and the fact that people will take. I mean, it's the whole argument like we have with theory. That's what he's relying on, and I find it funny that and he's done this in other memes. He focuses on the statute of limitations, which I didn't realize about the difference between civil and criminal. But as I said, the Catholic Church has actively fought extending the statute of
yes, and that's also disgusting.
And in New York in 2016, as I said, he celebrated the defeat of the Child Victims Act. Okay, by comparing it to rape of the Catholic Church.
Not the best analogy.
No.
He chose it intentionally, but yeah, this is the mind that is creating the widespread apologia that we see, such as, as we were talking before the show, on your wall, Deb. I mean, this is where it's coming from.
And to go back in what we were talking about before, how it's finally seems to let the cat out of the bag, so to speak. So this is from the Friendly Atheist, which his source was Religion News Service. Now, Hemet's pretty good about vetting his sources, so I'm gonna figure he's looked this over. But they're saying that at this time, the following states are now launching their own inquiry into Catholic dioceses. We've got New York, New Jersey, Nebraska, New Mexico, Florida, Missouri, and Illinois. So they're all apparently opening their own investigation into abuses in the church. So that is definitely good. So Scott, he's been doing his own little thing over here. Now he's raising awareness in a little more in your face kind of way, but not too much. Scott, what have you been up to?
Yeah, I'm doing the opposite. I'm doing an end run opposite of Thomas. While he's collecting money for the survivors of clergy abuse. Which I saw, I think about 4 or 5 days ago. That link to the fundraiser is on my wall or my page as well as his takedown of Bill Donahue from the Holy Koolaid was pretty good too. So what I've been doing is, this was 25 years in the making. Thomas might not remember. But I do remember watching live Sinead O'Connor ripping the picture of the Pope on Saturday Night Live. And that's when I started to tune my ears more to this abuse in the Catholic Church, that it may be more than just some propaganda.
Folks may not know, but you were raised Catholic as well.
Oh, not me. No, I was actually Protestant.
Oh, you weren't? Okay, my bad.
Yeah, you're thinking of our buddy Greg.
Oh, no, I knew about Greg, but I thought you were, my bad. Sorry.
No, what may have thrown you is I did go to a Catholic high school for a couple of years.
Oh, that'll be it. Okay.
Yeah. So I've been following this story of clergy abuse for a couple of decades now. And Spotlight came out which I thought, wow, this is really going to blow the lid off of things. And I started to tell people, you know, I think this could be the beginning of the end of this organization. And it didn't really happen yet. More and more, I mean, every day now I get a new story about some kind of abuse scandal somewhere in the world. So by the time I heard Bill Donahue shooting his mouth off last week or a couple of weeks ago, I had enough myself. I thought, well, what can I do? I can see the great work and the immensely difficult, lengthy, boring sometimes, but life-changing work that people do into bringing the priest to trial. But that's pretty slow by design. What can I do as just an average person? What's the vulnerable spot of this organization? Well, you know, we've seen the billions that they have and how they spend it. When you've spent almost $4 billion just fighting statute of limitation laws, that's a pretty big boss to take down. Heavily armored at the top. Underneath, though, is a very vulnerable underbelly, typically known as parishioners. And I went in about 3 weeks ago just to see for myself what would happen if I went out and picketed my local Catholic church just by myself, go for a walk in the morning and stand there and see what kind of reaction I'd get. And I've done it for 3 weeks now. And it's been a really interesting study, very rather therapeutic. But the reaction I've been getting has been very interesting, and I can really sense the change that's going on. That if I had done this about a year ago, even, I think the reaction would be a lot different. At this point, with the Pennsylvania findings coming out, they know that there's absolutely no defense against what I've been saying. And so what I've been doing is going out and just holding some very small signs and seeing the reaction I've been getting from the parishioners as I come in for Mass. And I did it the 1 week, and I realized I'm at a pretty small church. There, you know, a very liberal guess, I would say there maybe about 120 people in that building at the most.
Okay.
So it's small, but I'm lazy, and I want to. This is my first outing doing this. It's only barely more than a block from my house.
Start small, work your way up. Yeah.
So let's just see what happens. See if I get, you know, pelted with, you know, wafers or anything like that. And like I said, from a rough estimate, there's 2 entrances or, you know, ways to get into this building. I couldn't cover both of them, but there couldn't have been more than 120 people went in there. And the reaction was almost uniform. So by the time I went back the second week, I decided, well, maybe I should just film this. First of all, to prove people that said, oh, you're not really doing that. Oh yeah, I really am. Here's me at the church. So by the 3rd week, I went and I filmed a little bit longer and explained what was actually going on with the reactions. Kind of just narrating my little wandering trip around this church for 20 minutes. The reaction, I wanted to show, first of all, that like some of my friends have said and family, you need to be careful. And when you see the video, it's kind of amusing that these elderly people are not ready to, you know, throw down, even if they weren't dressed for church. The average age in there has got to be 65, which probably is one of the reasons why the numbers hopefully will keep dropping when the average is senior age.
Yeah.
But what I did was before I went, I really did put a little bit of thought into it about the sign I was going to use. I actually have 2 signs, and I intentionally made them small so people wouldn't see what I was doing. From a block away or when they drove past, they didn't know. They didn't have time to put up any defense whatsoever until it was too late. So they would come within 10, 15 feet of me, make eye contact. They'd see that I'm smiling. Then their eyes would go down to see what I was holding in the sign. And the reaction was just amazing. That most of them did manage to return my good mornings. But even though we just shared a smile not 3 seconds ago, some people are instantly pretended that I didn't exist. So there was a few of those. I didn't have anybody get upset or even really frown at me directly. Most of them would say good morning and their eyes went straight onto the sidewalk or their feet. They would get to the top of the stairs, get greeted by the priest and the ushers, and to a parishioner, every single one of them turned around and pointed to me as they were talking to the priest. So they did see me.
That's good.
And every single one of them did that. One of the reasons why I'm actually moving on to a new unsuspecting church is they're used to me there now. People recognize me from the previous weeks, and I've actually had a couple of conversations with the same person. If they're still going, that number one, I've planted any seed I'm going to plant already. So I'm not going to keep wasting my Sunday mornings at that particular church. I'm going to move on. A couple did stop and chat. I don't know if you saw the video from last Sunday.
No, I didn't. I just noticed that you had that up now.
Yeah, it's kind of amusing. The lady was actually thrown off by my sign and wanted clarification. She thought that maybe I had made a mistake on the sign.
Well, can you tell folks what your signs say?
Yeah, actually got them.
Awesome.
So
got 'em there.
I don't know if lighting.
Yep, there we go. That one says, "Please worship responsibly." And my favorite, collection plate equals pedophile defense fund.
So I didn't, and I still don't think there's anything terribly cryptic about that.
No.
It did confuse one person. I'm very glad she stopped and asked for clarification. I was able to explain to her that the equal sign means the collection plate is the pedophile defense fund. She thought maybe I was actually collecting myself for a pedophile defense fund.
Oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll give her as much, it was early in the morning. I'm not a morning person. That is the most difficult part of this, is actually getting up for me at that ungodly hour.
It's one of the people that I can message at 3:00 in the morning and be like, "Oh, hey."
Yeah. Whether I'm getting up at 7 or not, it doesn't change. I can't even think of going to bed before 2:30. But yeah. So, but I made sure I had my joint and 2 coffees before I left, so I was somewhat awake and not a danger to anybody. And the way I'm doing it is not confrontational. The most shocking thing about what I'm doing is just what this piece of paper says. And in Peterborough, where I live, they've actually now they do this everywhere, where they'll pick it with pictures of aborted fetuses.
Yes.
Peterborough, they've actually put it on the back of a bus now. So I figured to myself, well, if they can do that, I can go and pick at them to remind them of their association with pedophilia, and I can still maintain the moral high ground. Absolutely. So I'm not, and it is throwing a lot of my friends off who message me or put right on my wall, "I think you're being way too polite." Yeah, that is a change of pace for me. It's something I thought I'd try out. I'm a firebrand atheist. I have atheist tattoos all over me. Well,
Yeah.
you know, I've got a dangling clergy being hung on my tattoo. This isn't a phase I'm going through. I've actually have been like this for a long time.
Scott
But
might be a little more firebrand than me, even.
yeah,
Oh boy.
well, I've always, you know, I mean, certainly since 9/11, we've all, whether we wanted to or not, had to give the teachings of religion maybe a closer second look. Might be prudent. So I did really get into that, and at the same time, I'm going to be 50 in a couple of weeks. I'm at that age now where my kids are grown, and I'm kind of dispendable now. Like I don't have, people don't need me anymore, so I can just go off and do whatever I want, attract as much attention to myself as I want, put myself through.
As big a shit disturber as you feel like, right?
Exactly.
Doesn't matter.
Well,
So,
I think something you said as far as being too polite, Hammett Mehta from Friendly Atheist gets that criticism a lot, and he had made a point, and I don't remember the exact way he worded it, but basically it comes down to honey attracts more flies.
yeah.
And when I'm in the debate groups, I find it funny because I will be sickeningly sweet.
Yeah.
But if you do not read my words correctly, you will miss the fact that I'm ripping you to fucking shreds at the same time.
Yep.
Where I don't have to call someone a stupid idiot or a moron or delusional directly. I still do. But they 99.9% of the time, they just don't get it. And I think in the case with specifically with the abuses within the church, I think we have to take that tactic because we are dealing with an older crowd, and contrary to Bill Donahue belief that the Catholic Church is growing, it is not. And Gallup just recently published a poll showing that fact.
Well, like what Scott was saying is how all the people at that church were senior citizens practically.
Well,
I didn't see a single person there under the age of 35.
Yeah. Well, my home church, my parent, well, now my dad and my mom passed 3 years ago, but my home church, the average age is about 67. Okay. Now, my mom died at 94. She would be, so that was about 4 years ago. There are childhood friends of my mother, who I love to death, by the way, who are still alive, that are still attending that church. They have been since the 1920s.
Yeah.
Okay. So gentrification of churches is very common. Our church, okay, I was raised Lutheran.
I don't think you meant gentrification. I think you meant geriatrification.
Yeah. Getting older.
If that's a word, but
Yeah.
geriatrification.
The church is getting older and there ain't no young people coming in.
Well, even my mother-in-law complains about that because she goes to an evangelical Lutheran church, and she's one of these churches where they have services in German still too, and she's always complaining that, you know, it took them a year and a half to get a new pastor to do the German services, and there's hardly any young people left in the church, and everybody in the choirs, seniors and stuff like that. And she, of course, she's horribly upset about it. I'm sitting behind her going, yes.
Well, what's funny is the older parishioners are complaining that they're not drawing in the younger crowd. And what I find funny is, and I might have a little backwards, so I'll try to find the link to the actual study that just came out besides the Gallup one. but the church thinks it's for one reason, and I can't remember what they stated. I want to say it's homosexuality, but I don't think it is.
Oh, they blame everything on you poor gay.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's correct. So, but they blame it on one thing. When this survey, if I remember the details correctly, is basically there's no critical thinking in the church, and that's why the kids aren't. It's like I don't really like using the term in such a blatant way, but they don't buy the fairy tales.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll have to try to find that study. Church thinks the kids are leaving for this reason, when in actuality,
Something else. Yeah.
totally, and they're totally oblivious to that. And like, and this is why I, besides Bill is an asshole, I mean, he's spouting this rhetoric that isn't even true. Okay, regardless of his bullshit about the whole, diddling priest issue. I mean, it's like, and what's funny is that the American Council of Bishops, which basically is the head of the Catholic Church here in the States, don't agree with Bill Donahue. They have actually censored him a couple times.
Yeah, they're kind of like, yeah, he's not really one of us.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't.
We're not with him.
Yeah,
they haven't
stupid.
Yeah, they haven't completely severed ties, but it was explained to me, and this is a very, very good point, is Bill Donahue says what the American Council of Bishops and the American Catholic Church cannot say.
Yeah. So I wonder then if they're like, oh, we didn't sanction that, is just them paying lip service to. Exactly.
And that's what it comes down to. So it's like, I don't take Donahue seriously in the sense, do I think he's a representative of American Catholicism? No, because he's a fucking dick. I mean, if anybody follows him and follows his apologia, I mean, you have to be the most uncritical thinking person on this planet.
Yeah.
I mean, he outright denies that the Pope has stated that, or has acknowledged that there's a problem in the church.
Of course he does.
Even though the Pope just, was it in Ireland? I might be getting my timeline, where he basically said, yeah, we have a problem. We need to take care of it. Even though nothing's going to be done.
Yeah, even though take care of it means, okay, everybody, let's fast when we pray this time.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I could.
Let's wish real hard and be hungry.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, not even 10 days. I mean, the Pope says that 10 days later. No,
being hungry makes the wishing more effective, apparently. I don't know.
People wonder where Mother Teresa got her attitude from.
Oh, fuck that bitch. So Scott Brian says he's in the chat and keep it up. And so Brian is from Brantford Freethinkers. It's Brantford Freethinkers, right? Yeah. The Brantford group that I've hung out with at a time. And he also says the very least that could result from what Scott's doing is that rank and file Catholics may start finally asking questions, something they were afraid to do in the past. And that's really a good point. Because like you said, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
If you keep, like I said, it's kind of stealthy, right?
Yes.
And Donald Trump would say, invisible. I'm stealthy. You have to get within 15 feet of me, then you get that seed implanted in your head. Now, with most Catholics, they have been managed to kind of compartmentalize, because these are otherwise good people. Most of them.
They are.
Most of Catholics, I know. There's just this one little issue where you've been funding pedophilia for hundreds of years. You've been playing the rape lottery with your own kids, so you can get the molestation rebate. There is actually, I think it was there was a story from Antigonish when there was a very big
Yes.
crisis there.
That's out in New Brunswick,
Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia. Easterners hate me because I always get those two mixed up.
I want to say it's W5, but
It is, because that story is actually still available on YouTube because I just recently watched it.
Well, the reason why the importance of that documentary, and that is a dime a dozen those stories, right? But the reason why I recommend that documentary to people is it actually goes more in depth to show you where the money comes from to fund a pedophile ring. And if the people sitting in the pews realized the information that they should have been able to figure out, I can't imagine how somebody would still sit there week after week. So the reason why I'm kind of quiet about planting my little seed until it's too late, they get up close and I suddenly shoot it into their head with a nail gun. It's too late. They didn't put up any walls. I made them think when they didn't want to, and it's too late. You've already thought about that. Now what are you going to do? You're going to go and sit for an hour and a half and listen to this guy drone on. You're not thinking about what he's saying. You're thinking about my little sign. And I know that one of the primary topics of conversation is going to be come tea and coffee hour. Hey, did you see that guy out there? Or the subsequent weeks, yeah, I saw him again. He was out there again. Shit's getting real.
And what are they going to be thinking when that collection plate comes around again?
I want them to recoil from it like it was filled with snakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I think what's important, at least for me, is when I, quote, realized who you were, is the conversation on your wall, Deb, with the... and Scott, I think you had thrown a couple comments in there, and
I think you did, yes.
And it was like, okay, dude's on it, and then I don't know, it was about a week later. You said, "Yeah, Scott's gonna come on the show," and I'm like, "Oh, Scott!" It's like it's the realization that, unlike me, who doesn't leave her apartment, you're actually able to go out and do something. And like you said, your little signs, well, I shouldn't say little, but your smaller size scale signs there make the point more so than I think.
And that's why I'm still, polite. I'm non-confrontational. I'm planting seeds in your garden. I'm not going to walk through your garden after I've done that. I've shot my bolt, as Hitch would say.
Yep.
That's all I got. That's all I want. And these people are not going to. They have nothing to respond with other than good morning. They've got nothing. And when you realize I can walk, I'll be walking in the mall. I'll be at in the lineup at the grocery store. I'll be in the library. Doesn't matter. I've overheard somebody say something about I was at mass or Father this or that, and I'll turn around and say, "Excuse me, are you still Catholic?" Perfect stranger. I don't care. I just don't care anymore.
Well, I think for me, I've been tracking this type of stuff for about 8-9 years now, and then the AG report came out. Of course, Spotlight was before that and other stuff, but I didn't know how to react to it because it was like, wow. I mean, this is just, typical.
Did you hear Meta read?
Oh, yeah, I have the report saved. I have I've read it. And then I was talking with a friend who told me that our former priest, not the current one, in our small Catholic church here, is on the list. Now, I live in a really dinky town in the middle of buttfuck nowhere. Okay, maximum population of the entire county is less than 5,000. Not only is the priest on that list, but my friend is a victim. I have since discovered that I know 5 victims of this priest. And that really drove it home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it made it even more real.
Yeah.
And I actually had one person who kind of sort of follows what I do, but not really, for reasons, tell me that to keep doing what I'm doing. We don't agree, obviously, on religious issues. But she's like, somebody's got to do it, because she goes, my church is not going to. Why she's still Catholic, I will never know.
Yeah, well, I've noticed that with some of the documentaries that I've watched where they've interviewed victims, and they talk about how they valued their faith, but they couldn't a lot of them couldn't reconcile with being Catholic per se. But
Well,
they,
I think
but
that
even
comes
then,
down.
some of them were struggling with, well, I still want to be Catholic, but I can't participate in the organized church and things like that. Like,
I think a lot of it, and this is something we were talking about, but I don't think in this regard, Stockholm Syndrome.
yeah.
I think in a sense, it's a variation of Stockholm Syndrome. And I have another friend who is, or well, I should say now, was a Catholic priest.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, it's not like they're going to just stop believing in whatever religion they believe in because they were molested. Like, that doesn't make sense. But, so yeah, it's still that, but it's just they're not participating because they do know, I mean, firsthand, they know that the organization is covering it up, but they're still, I think what they're meaning is that, yes, I still believe in the theology and everything, but I'm not participating in this organization anymore because I have firsthand experienced this type of abuse.
Well, I think there's a huge cognitive disconnect. And I think you're right. They still believe in the theology, but not the organization.
Which is all I'm hoping for right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you go to the, if you look all the way through the Picket on Sunday group page, you won't see me mention once God.
No.
This isn't a theological discussion.
No, it is.
I've had them for decades, and I'm very happy to sit and talk with somebody for 3 or 4 days about why I don't believe there's any God. That's got nothing to do with what I'm doing right now. I'm very careful to make sure that this is open to anybody of any stripe that wants to join. When I'm out picketing, I'm not representing, even though I have challenged the Brantford group to a church picket off to see who can picket the most churches by Christmas. I'm not representing my other group, the Skeptical Humanists of Peterborough. I'm not representing atheists. I'm just representing a common trait of humanity where we have, for the most part, agreed for as long as I can remember that pedophilia is horrific.
I think that's a really good point, Scott, that it is not a theological issue.
Yeah. I don't want to alienate anybody who could be a potential ally.
Because let's be honest, we're going to need people in the church to stand up and say, no, we're not going to put up with this. You need to change as an organization, because if it's only people from outside that say it, they're just forever going to say, oh, they just hate us because we're Catholic or whatever.
Or because they're atheists or whatever. No, we're just a humanist.
You need the diehard Catholic who's, went through all the catechism and baptized all their kids and, never eats meat on Friday. And that's the people that we need to step up and say, that's it. We've had it. You need to change. And we're not putting up with it.
you can see that the narrative has gone through the church, where the one fellow that did want to stop and chat for a bit agreed with basically everything I said. That this is a big problem. It's not going away. It's an old problem. It's still with us. The one area, of course, that we did part ways on was he wanted to blame the entire problem on the gays.
Of course.
So I was trying to explain what you and I have talked about before, why a priest may prey upon, pun intended, a male victim isn't necessarily because he's a homosexual.
Not at all.
Because boys are very much less likely to tell on him.
And traditionally, up until recent years, there was far greater access to young boys than there ever were girls.
So you notice another story, another very common theme is a story I just put up a couple of days ago where they were targeting kids, deaf kids.
Yes, that's happened several times.
If you're gonna blame it, the raping of male victims on homosexuality, are you now going to try to blame this news story or this rehash story on a fetish for deaf people?
Yeah.
No, it's because they're vulnerable.
It's
because they're vulnerable, they're easy prey, and they're less likely to tell. If you have a cognitive disability, is another big target for them.
Mm-hmm. The group in the Keepers, which was a girls' school, so there's your cluster of female victims. They targeted girls who had confessed to earlier abuse in confession.
Mm-hmm.
So the one woman who kind of is a key role in all of that, she confessed that her uncle had been molesting her in confession. And instead of getting that child help, that priest went to the ringleader priest and said, "Hey, we've got a live one for you." And they raped her for years after that because they knew she already felt guilty about her original abuse. They told her she was a whore, that no one would believe a filthy whore like her, and she was just dirty and wanted to fuck everything that moved, and that they were trying to help her, and it's the horrible things they said to that poor girl. But that was what they did. Or another girl in that story, they targeted her because this was the 60s. She got caught smoking weed. Her parents flipped their shit and wanted the priest to fix her. And they send her to the priest, and the priest said, "I'm going to tell them that you have mental illness and that we're going to lock you up in the insane asylum unless you comply with what we're going to do here." It just ridiculous, but that's what they do. They look for any kind of vulnerability. The kid who's that there's trouble at home and they're having esteem issues, and the kid who maybe has even an emotionally abusive parent who has got vulnerability because of anything they can get their stinking hands on. And it doesn't.
It's just like, along that same theme, the report that just came out from BuzzFeed concerning the all-girls school, nuns abusing the children there.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I sent you that. Yeah, BuzzFeed actually does some pretty good investigative journalism, and they just came out with another report about, this is an evangelical school, I believe, but about basically they're fixing girls who they thought were gay and things like that at these reform schools, and they're starting to look more into these reform schools similar to the one that I went to. So hopefully that'll lead to some good things. But
this whole trying to blame the gays, it's like it has nothing to do with being gay or lesbian. It has to do with the power structure. Taking advantage of vulnerabilities. And with pedophilia, strict pedophilia under the age of 11, most of the perps don't give a flying fuck whether the victim is male or female. They're attracted to
a prepubescent body.
Thank you, because I never would have gotten that out. Combination of words I can't say. But yeah, it has nothing to do with being gay, and the fact that, you know, like in Bill Donahue's case, he's relying on the John Jay study that allegedly, I've read the study. It's been a while, but you know, oh, they're gay priests. Well, no shit. When you have 59,000 priests, one of them's going to be gay.
Some of them are going to be gay in there.
Yeah. So it's like he, in my opinion, reading his reaction and how he refers back to a study that is now 17 years old, he misappropriates the statistics that are presented. I mean, and jumps to conclusions that, in my opinion, are not supported by the data. Totally ignoring that rape and molestation, etc., have nothing to do with your sexuality.
Well, and the thing is,
my abuser was fucking female.
And mine was male. So there you go. And the thing is, even if, like, let's say they were able to prove some sort of connection that they thought, if that was the case, then you would see a rise in abuses of homosexual people across every aspect of society, not just in the church,
right?
Or not just.
It's still irrelevant to the conversation.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. But there's no.
People talk about fixing the church. They talk about celibacy amongst priests. None of that's going to change. There's nothing to fix with the church. You have to just burn it and start over again. Go and join a different group. Go worship at home. I don't care. Go sit in your car with friends. Sing songs. I'll come over and sing with you. I don't care. You just have to stop funding pedophilia. That's the bottom line.
Well, I think too, a point Deb made is about the increase in female victims, because, you know, prior to 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago, females were not accessible because they couldn't be acolytes.
Yeah, there were no female there were no altar girls for a long time.
Yeah, and as they have allowed that into the church, the number of female victims, guess what, has increased.
Because it's about access. It's about access to children. It's not about what sexuality a priest has. You know, it's about them wanting to harm vulnerable children. And if it's a boy, if it's a girl, I mean, and again, it's kind of irrelevant. But yeah, this whole like, oh, it's because of the gays. We'll just blame the gays. We'll just throw another marginalized community under the bus for our own propaganda purposes is even more.
My favorite was that guy on my wall who said that anybody abusing children in the church weren't Catholics.
Yeah.
Oh, no true Scotsman. No real Catholic would do that. No Christian would do that. No whatever would do that.
But it was beyond no true Scotsman, because they were fake Catholics who joined the church specifically to destroy it.
And the Catholics in the pews still funded it.
Yeah.
So how stupid do you look?
Exactly. And I'm like, okay, so the Pope's not Catholic? Because we have signed documents from Ratzinger how he put a kibosh on any further reporting when he was in charge of that wing as a cardinal. So the cardinal's not Catholic. I thought these guys were supposed to be able to tell who was righteous and shit, you know?
I thought the position of Pope was a lifetime position.
It is. Yeah, I know. Wonder how that happened.
You can just quit. Look at it. If the last Pope can quit, you can quit going to church.
Right.
Well, yeah, it had happened actually before, but not since the 1100s. But so, so yeah, it was a long, long time ago. But yeah, it's just wild that they're just allowing these people to just keep on doing this, and then they're using these nonsense arguments as to why it's okay to keep tithing or why it doesn't matter if, and they're like, oh well, it's not happening in my church, and it's like, okay, well maybe it's not, but the money's going to
That's
the bank where it's going to be dispersed to maybe other priests. And so even if it's not your priest, then you need to take a stand and stop getting money.
And like in a
charity work doesn't leave you with a balance of zero. They don't play off of each other. They don't cancel each other out.
Like, I don't care how many poor people you feed, you fuck a kid, you're a sick bastard, you need to be in jail. Like, I don't care. Like, the poor people probably appreciate that unless you were fucking one of their kids, in which case you're really a sick fucking bastard. But it just... well, actually, we've got Dan Sarah over in the chat says the Catholic compartmentalization is limitless.
Mm-hmm.
It does kind of appear that way. I mean, the guy on my page, it didn't matter what anybody said. Well, you saw him, Scott. It didn't matter what anybody said. He had an excuse for it. And it didn't matter that I said flat out, I said, if you are knowingly giving money to the church, you may as well have diddled a kid yourself. And just like poof, right over his head. You can't blame the whole church for that.
Well, actually, yes, I can.
I'm seeing less of people like that though, which is an encouraging sign. It's like what Scott was saying, where people are acknowledging it, and they don't have anything really to say things like, "Oh, that's not true. Oh, why are you out here telling lies?" Because everybody. Well, not everybody, obviously, that person on your page, but most people, even in the Catholic Church, believe that this is happening. So, yeah, it is starting to crumble and it is starting to fall apart there. It's just taking that next step of stop going to church or just stop giving money until you get some kind of action that says we're not going to pay for, we're not going to send money to you so you can use it to defend pedophiles.
I was just sitting here thinking, like, God, I wish I could do what Scott's doing at my Catholic church, but I really don't want to be shot. Because I think his method. I mean, yeah, we can have our online debates and all that stuff. I think his method of being subtle,
yes,
is perfect, and I really wish I could do that here, but I really think I would be shot. Or worse.
Well, could you?
And that's and just because the gun culture here, where I specifically live, is.
What if a sign like that was to magically appear in the front lawn of the church every Sunday? They don't
have a lawn. They have this little piece, maybe 6x6, and they have an abortion is wrong, basically statue.
So what if a banner every Sunday materialized over top of the anti-abortion sign?
It says the Catholic take on child's rights is that they begin at conception and promptly end at birth.
Yes.
I'm going to have to ponder that, but this town is so small, I don't know if I could get away with it without getting arrested.
But they roll up the sidewalk at 9, don't they?
Yeah, but with my luck, I'd have a secret.
I was out for a walk and look at this thing I found. I didn't know whose it was. I thought maybe it belonged to the church, so I left it here.
Yeah, I'll have to ponder that because that might.
I'm just saying.
Stealth in my case, or people in a similar situation, that might be
sympathetic
method to use, because I mean here, and I can't be the only one in this situation, is like Deb says, they roll up literally 9 o'clock. The streets are gone. I mean, we're the only restaurant still open at 9, and we close at 9, and soon it will be 8. And basically, the town is dead. I mean, if there's a football game or a basketball game at the high school, forget it. You won't see anybody for at least 2 hours. But because of the gun culture here, the hunting and the fishing, and I'm not talking gun culture that leads to the mass shootings, but just, got to have my guns. I would seriously be concerned for my safety.
No, I understand that. That's what.
But it's like there has to be a way that somebody like me, and in the situation that I'm in, can do something similar to what you're doing.
Well, and the thing is like, if you just kind of put a sign, even if you can find out where the property line is, and just put it like on the other side of the church's property, like something like that, where it just magically appears, overnight. And if they start figuring out that you're going to do it, on a certain night, just start doing it on a different night. So
I'd pick. Well, I have to be careful too, and I probably shouldn't say this publicly, but my boss goes to the church.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, see, and then there's that problem, but I just because I like Scott's method.
Yeah,
I really like Scott's method, and I think in some ways we need to expand on it.
And a couple of points. So Brian says child rape is not a forgivable sin; it's a punishable crime. Absolutely. And Dan says poverty is a big business for the Catholic Church. The number one step to ending poverty is giving women control over their own reproduction, and they know this. So, yep. But I'm thinking, like, now we don't get a whole lot of protesting around the hospital that does abortions in town here, but they do on occasion. I have to wonder next time if I'm out there, I wish there was an easy way to know when they were going to protest.
Yeah, I've thought of those folks a lot too. And my original idea actually last year was to get my own poster, photograph of a lovely big pair of naked breasts, and hold that in between them, so motorists would have something, a little bit more pleasant to look at.
Exactly.
And they certainly couldn't. Nobody would be able to tell me I can't do that. I mean, it's legal for you to walk downtown without a top on. I can certainly hold up a picture of naked breasts. But yeah, maybe I'll be looking for a through the week hobby too. That if I know that they're going to be at the hospital.
I like that and that I've made this point many, many times, but it really hits home with this because Catholics are among the biggest supporters of quote pro-life crap out there. And it's like, oh, so in fact, I've seen this in a meme. So you want more babies to be born so the priests don't run out of kids to diddle? Is that it?
Mm.
But just the whole idea that they don't give a shit once the kid's born. Like, oh, we're going to do everything we can to protect that fetus. But a kid getting molested? Oh, no, we can't. No, we ain't touching that. And
well, there's a place in Ireland. I put that up on the group page as well. They did back in the summer have kind of a vigil. There was, I don't know if you've heard the story, where there was almost 800 skeletons found in a septic tank.
Yes.
I think it was one of the nunnery / laundry workhouses, maybe.
Okay.
It's in Ireland. Yes, it was
Quite
in Ireland.
common, very common around the world. We certainly had a lot of them in Canada. And that just kind of represents how the Catholic take on the importance of a child's life. It just kind of represents that for me.
It's funny that you mentioned. Smilem Park, because I just posted an update about it like 2 days ago.
That's it. Yeah.
And oh no, this is the Scotland one, the one with the septic tanks. They don't believe the nuns were responsible for killing the children.
No,
or
but
not
just
properly. I hate using
They're
this word.
basically just flushing them.
Yeah. They're not doing it properly, but Smilem Park is one that happened in Scotland, and they just this past week arrested and charged some nuns, staff members.
wow.
And that happened, what, 40 years ago?
Wow. That's good they got them, though.
Yeah. So justice is moving slowly, but it is moving. And it goes back to the narrative you were telling about police and, in this case, prosecutors helping the Catholic Church cover up the abuse. They just there's a story that was just published today. Was it today? On September 1st, so about a week ago, where in the Pennsylvania case, they actually have evidence of that happening. So,
and I think it was in the Keepers, there was a prosecutor involved in one of those cases that basically pulled the rug out from under whatever investigation was going on too.
Yeah. So I think the more, like doing what Holy Koolaid's doing with having fundraisers for SNAP, and there are a couple other organizations raising funds as well, not to take away from SNAP. I think the more we're able to do, if you're in the financial position to do that, to donate funds, to an organization like SNAP, or do what Scott's doing, even though he's by himself, so to speak, do something that simple. Or if y'all can help me come up with ideas for the church here, I'd love y'all. I think the more we're able to do that, I think the more it's going to come out, and the more these stories about prosecutors and cops covering up for the church, it's going to, help blow that lid even further off.
Well, and Scott, you didn't really want too many people with you anyway. Like you don't mind being by yourself, but you said you wouldn't want more than one or two other people with you anyway.
Oh, I think if we have more than 2 or 3 people at one church, we're not being efficient.
I agree with you there. I think then it becomes a kind of a war.
Well, and his point is that, well, if there's 8 of you, you could put 2 of you at 4 different churches instead of.
Right.
Like,
I can see
I don't see what the difference would be is the reaction from reading my one sign or the reaction from walking into a crowd that you've actually had time to prepare for and get your hackles up. What more is 7 more signs going to do to the message I've already given in the one? Let's go and hit 6 other churches in the same day. I think that'd be far more efficient. I understand why people wouldn't want to do this by themselves. So if you want to take a friend for moral support and somebody to talk to, somebody to take your picture while you're doing it, I understand why you wouldn't want to do it by yourself. But I didn't see the necessity to get a crowd.
I think it's more, I think you have a point that it'd be more effective with 1 or 2 people versus a crowd, because then it becomes almost the reaction becomes defensive.
Yeah, because when if they see Scott standing, on the sidewalk or something, they're not even going to have a clue what he's doing, especially like you said, if his signs are smaller, they have to get right up to him before, oh, this guy's protesting. Oh, and so they're not going to approach him going, oh, fucking protester, I'm gonna tell him what for, you know.
Yeah, we
Or
have
like it isn't like hostile. It's like, oh, they're just trying to attack the, you know, or church or whatever, and then it kind of gets out of control, and then it's like, yeah, it's like, oh, there's these weirdos that are protesting the church instead of it being like, hey, instead of being like, hey, I'm just trying to inform you of what's going on.
Yeah,
Well,
but
I think that's why another one of our friends who does solo pickets,
Deanna.
so effective is that, you know, she primarily focuses on Jesse Mahoney's bullshit and related to that within evangelicals, and she will go and picket a specific church, and she'll do it for weeks on end, and not just on Sundays, but if they have Bible study or, you know, shit like that during the week, she'll go and pick it them. And I gotta give her credit because she's got a lot of balls. But that's Deanna.
Yeah, she's something else. You would get a kick out of her, Scott. She's actually still a believing Christian, but she hates the abuses of not just of people, but of you know, congregations and funds and things like that in some of these mega churches. She's down in Arizona, and so she'll go and picket some of these mega churches that have been exposed with, you know, misusing funds or mistreating parishioners or things like that. So she's quite the she's quite good at it and very enthusiastic.
well, the thing is that people quickly realize, and you can see it, part of their shock when they read. They realize that I'm protesting, but I'm actually not protesting the church. I'm protesting you. It's
That's
you
right.
I'm protesting. I want you to think about your own personal tie. This is marketing stuff, right? If you're an organization that is trying to raise money for starving kids in Africa, you don't show a picture that you could of hundreds of kids that are starving lined up. You pick one kid, you focus on the kid, you give the kid a name. You show the kid's face. That will get people's attention much more than having. What really did it for me, I'm sure you've seen the old, he must be in his late 70s, if not older, from giving testimony at the Irish investigation.
He is 85 and he's still alive.
We can talk about the tens and tens of thousands of victims just in Ireland.
Yes.
It doesn't have the impact of that one man's statement.
Oh, that just, oh, I mean, I just wanted to fly to Ireland and hug the guy.
Oh, I wanted to reach right through the screen and just let him know that
yeah.
You know, I'm thinking about him, and I probably won't stop thinking about him. That's what it looks like to live for 75 plus years of carrying around your abusive scars.
And the fact that they basically wouldn't believe him for that long.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah.
that would take me, 85 years to try to sort all that shit out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the thing. 85 years to sort it out. 85 years of being told by the hierarchy that, oh, it never happened. I mean, it's mind-blowing what the victims have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, well over 30 years for me, and I still have to deal with this shit. You know, I mean, it wasn't a priest, but it's the same kind of thing. And that's why I say it is like when I see some of these fuckers getting, 6 months in jail or even 5 years in jail or whatever, and they're bitching and whining and moaning that, oh, I shouldn't have to go. Like, fuck you, buddy. I got a goddamn life sentence, and everybody else that you fucking diddled got a life sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no getting away with it. You don't get parole from dealing with abuse like that. It doesn't happen. So suck it up, Buttercup, and do the pitiful ass time that you're gonna get, and these assholes that get sent to the Vatican to, oh, they're just gonna pray for the rest of their, like, fuck you. Those guys should be rotting in a cell somewhere, worried that Jesus is gonna come and pay him a visit.
Yeah. Well, the wheels of justice move slowly, but I figure if I could at least help out, if I can cut off any money that's going to fight any, any legal cases, let's cut off their funding, where, the source of it.
Absolutely.
They've got way too much money.
And all it takes, even if you make one person reconsider their donation that week and think,
we all know who Ray Kurzweil is. What I'm doing, if I could duplicate that, cities across my province, my country, I could see something like this easily wrapping itself around the globe.
Mm-hmm.
It could be quite devastating. I've seen the flurry of craziness that I've the stir that I've caused at that one little.
Sure.
And it was the easiest thing I did all week.
Yeah, you just stand there and say hi to people.
Yeah, I'm already good at standing around doing little. I'm good at that. I've been doing that for years.
You could be a Walmart greeter.
Yeah, I'd be great at that. Great. I just have to stand here and look pleasant. I can do that once a week.
There you go.
But that's the underlying point is to the Catholics that I'm giving is number one, you have to get used to the conversations that I'm forcing upon you. They're not going to go away. I think we have reached a critical mass point in this very centuries old story of clergy abuse. It's not going to go away anymore. It just won't. It's not going to go away until the next big thing. It's got residual effects this time. And I've been tracking everything, CBC, all these different news outlets that I subscribe to, and watch the reactions to these stories is very different from just 1 or 2 years ago even. Mm-hmm. Nobody is going to identify as Catholic in public. You may get 1 or 2 and they'll quickly learn that's not a good idea. You will have to pay a social price if you identify as Catholic. And that's my mandate, is you will pay a price. You need to pay that price. I'm going to ignore the flat earthers and other wingnuts that are, for the most part, comparatively speaking, quite harmless. I run another group of it. It's for skeptics, but I'm going to put that on hold right now and work on this full time.
Yeah, good for you.
It's persecution and anti-Catholicism.
Yeah. You better believe it is.
Yeah.
Well, I like that comeback.
It ain't going away.
The guy that told me I was a bigot against pedophiles, I'm like, yes, I am. Yep. Quite happy with that, actually.
But isn't he the one, though, or am I mixing him up, that also said that he was?
Yeah, he's a pedophile. Yeah.
So it's like, well, it's like the other one on your wall that all 3 of us were involved with talking to, and I said to you in a private chat, and I finally did it in the thread. I said, are you a pedophile? Because damn, you're sure defending him. Yeah. It's like,
well, no, the other guy actually came out and said he was one. He was mad because I actually made a meme, Scott. This is like, almost 2 years ago now, and it's a picture of a collection plate, and I labeled it Pedophile Defense Fund, and I posted that, and this was somebody that I was actually Facebook friends with, and they got all pissy about, why did you have to say pedophile and not child molester? I'm like, there's a difference. And he's like, well, pedophile, I'm not even going to say it, but I can't, they can't help being a pedophile. And a lot of pedophiles don't actually hurt anybody. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, what the? And of course I start arguing with the guy, and then it comes out, well, I'm a pedophile. I'm like, get the fuck off my wall. Like yesterday, goodbye. He's like, you're a bigot. Yes, I am. Oh, yes, definitely. When it comes to the pedophile, big old bigot right here. Yep, not a problem.
I think what
Yeah,
amazes
why would you make that argument? Like, why would you spend the time to make that
Well, even
argument?
if you're right, like, so what?
Yeah,
Yes,
so what?
technically, you could be a pedophile and never touch a kid ever in your life, but you're still a pedophile.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
You're irrelevant to the conversation.
everything about what would make you happy is harmful to someone. There's no way around that. Like, that's a drive that you have that will force you to hurt someone if you ever gave into it. And my argument is, I don't care if you're the most altruistic pedophile on the planet, that you're morally disgusted with yourself and the idea of hurting a kid. What if you get a head injury and suddenly you lose that ability to empathize or to control your urges? What if you get hit with dementia? Any of those things, or something like multiple sclerosis can affect your brain. Any manner of medical conditions or injuries can affect your ability to police yourself. Then what happens? It's like if somebody comes to you and says, I'm somehow they could prove I'm genetically compelled to murder people. We're not just going to pat you on the head and say, oh, well, that's how you were born, and we'll try and make the best of it. We're going to lock your ass in an institution somewhere. Like, that's just how it goes. So, but yeah.
If you were to fund that guy to go and shoot people, I'm actually thinking you might be worse.
Yeah, that's true. Like I said to the other guy, if you're giving money to the church, knowing that this shit is happening, you may as well be molesting a kid yourself.
Yeah.
but it's only happening in localized areas.
Oh, yeah, it's very localized. Yes.
Localized to the world.
I'm trying to figure out how Malta is local to Emporium, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Can someone
or
explain
Antigonish is local to Ireland.
Yeah.
Where's Antigonish?
Nova Scotia.
Okay, thank you. My geography is a little weak today.
Yeah, that was a big issue.
I remember the case, but I couldn't. I'm like,
well, and the other thing, because I watched that W5 episode not long ago, and the other thing that stuck out to me was the church, who we know has billions of dollars. They were forcing the little local parishes to try and pay out the compensation money, and basically bankrupting the local parishes.
Yep.
And not even offer. They were like, well, that was your priest, you pay for it. It's like, no, it's your fucking priest that you assigned here, asshole. And sorry.
The buck stops at the local diocese. The money only flows one way when it comes to the Vatican.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if they can find a way to keep it locked up in their bank, they will do it any way at all. It's disgusting. Like, I could be marginally less outraged if they at least stepped up and said, okay, you caught us at this one. And there's proof that there was a victim. Okay, we'll cough up compensation. Like that would marginally, like, okay, there's somebody with some compassion in there somewhere. But this shit of like, well, we're going to hide our assets and pretend like this diocese is bankrupt because we took all the money and put it into the maintenance fund for a cemetery. Like, the dead people need assistance. Like, give me a fucking break here. That angers me almost more than anything. Is like when there's a victim, when there's no way to dispute that there's a victim, you just kind of go, well, fuck them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think what I'll say sums it up for lack of a better word, but for me, I have actively tried to not talk about this, because we all know when there's a big story, it becomes the talk, and that's all anybody talks about, and then in 6 weeks it's gone forever.
Yeah.
But I have discovered that that is virtually fucking impossible, because this is so encompassing. I mean, we're not just talking a one-off, like, for example, Spotlight, the situation in Boston. Here we are 17 years later talking about the exact same fucking thing.
On a wider and wider scale. Every time we hear about it, it's more.
Going back to the reference to Sinead, who
Yes.
talked about it in 1992, and everybody called her a crazy fucking bitch. Because she...
I'm sorry, but somebody should do like a giant public apology to her.
Yeah, well, I do know, because I have followed Sinead for years, because she is also a fellow victim of bipolar disorder. And there have been a few, what's the word I'm looking for? Not super, super huge big name apologies, but there have been some apologies sent her way.
Well, good.
Which probably, I know this is going to sound very pessimistic, but for what she went through is like a Band-Aid on a gaping wound long. But it's got to be hard for her to...
Like, I would think, like, somebody should step up at the next fucking Grammys and be like, Sinead, you were right. We're fucking sorry.
Get Joe Pesci to do it.
Yeah, yes. Get that fucker to do it.
I would not be surprised to see that happen.
Good.
If things go, I mean, and this is pure speculation on my part, but if things continue to go in the direction they're going, and if Scott's idea were to multiply, I could see that happening.
Yeah.
Because Hollywood's so fucking liberal.
I didn't even know that about Joe Pesci until I think you posted about it, Scott. I didn't even know about that. That is so disgusting.
Oh no, I missed something.
Yeah, tell? I don't remember the details right off the top, but what did he do?
In a nutshell, he went on the. I think it might have even been the next week. I have a feeling it was a couple of weeks after, but anyhow, he was hosting it.
Saturday Night Live.
He showed a picture. He had taped up the picture. Taped it back up.
I remember that now. Okay.
Yeah. So, but this would be a good opportunity for Joe Pesci to make good too.
Yeah. Because I didn't realize he was a dickhead.
Maybe he feels like shit now. I don't know. He probably does.
Probably, yeah. He does. I really do. And like, honestly, I wish that every person out there who ever doubted somebody coming forth and saying I was abused by a priest, whether it was molested or beaten or emotionally abused or whatever, I hope you feel like shit now for doubting that person. I do. Because kids don't make that shit up.
No. And that's the thing. I mean, and it goes back to the whole issue of the second they are born, they basically cease to exist.
Yeah. Well, by the time they're born, so when they're not born, they're a moneymaker because there's something that they can get the parishioners to rally around. Once they're born, they're the ones that are expected to put out the money. And if you're not putting out the money, then fuck you. Yeah. That's basically where it boils down to. I mean, when you have a religion that you are expected to give money in order to pray for someone with a fucking candle, Like that's like the what was it 2013 when we went on vacation to Quebec City. There's a lot more Catholic churches in Quebec, and a lot of them are just open for tourists, and I love old architecture, so we went into some, and that was one of the most disgusting things I saw. The area where you're supposed to be able to light a candle to encourage prayers for your loved one, you're supposed to pay anywhere from $1 to $5 for that fucking candle just to light it and pray for your loved one.
Yeah. Well, I think from an overall perspective, I think what the sexual abuse issue, and specifically within the Catholic Church, I think it's going to open more doors into the absurdity of religious belief.
I hope so.
And I think this is why, for me personally, I'm finding it very hard to let this go. And not that I should let it go, but it's becoming almost borderline obsessive on my part. At least I think it is, because it's all I think about now. But it's like when you break it down into bits and pieces, the abuse within the church is related to their overall beliefs.
Yeah.
And I mean, it goes back to children being, and women being considered chattel.
Yep.
I mean, it's just mind blowing that you can, they don't give two craps about these victims.
No.
I mean, none. And then you have somebody, I know I'm picking on Bill Donahue, but he's so far has been being the worst. I've seen other people comment, but Cardinal Burke has said a few choice things as well. But, and then you have somebody like Bill. Rape, they were just groped.
Oh, yeah, that.
They weren't penetrated. That's not rape. The definition of rape.
Oh, that's so much better. Gee.
Yeah, groping some kid's dick is so much better than shoving yours up his butt.
Just to be clear, sucking off a baby penis that you just mutilated is pretty disgusting too. So
yeah, the mitzvah.
Yeah.
Also, again, it's like back to the guy arguing, oh, well, technically a pedophile and a child molester. It's like, why are you making these weird distinctions? Like, you're just trying to distract from the issues that are happening.
It's a hebephilia file. I'm like, I don't give a fuck what file it is. If you're fucking somebody who can't give consent, you're a sick fucker. Like,
it's to distract from a conversation. It's to make you stop talking about what's really happening and make you instead argue over these bullshit.
That's why when I made my first post about it, I was like, and if you think distinguishing between pedophile and hebephile is a worthwhile part of this discussion, you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
I don't care which one it is. It's kid fucking. And there's no excuse for that. It's like somebody's like, "Who's told me she was 18?" Like, ugh.
Well, it's like Cardinal Pell's, I think it was Pell, or one of the cardinals involved in his case, who said, "Well, I didn't know that fucking a kid was wrong."
Yeah, that just came up today, actually. Again. That guy.
I'm like,
I can't say for sure if I knew it was wrong at that point in time. I think was.
It's like,
what the hell planet are you on?
Yeah, and I think going back to what Scott's doing and Thomas is that people got to be. It's like, this is what these so-called morally superior individuals
is miters on too fucking tight.
It's like they don't know that fucking kids is wrong, and you're giving money to this dude.
But having an abortion is wrong. Right?
There you go.
Yeah. Jesus fuck. Well, I think we're about near the end here, folks. So we'll wrap things up and let everybody promote their stuff. So, Scott, thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
And if you want to promote your pages and stuff, please go ahead and do that.
Yeah, it's Picket on Sundays. If you want to look that up on Facebook, it's pretty easy to find. I've been using that hashtag on every story about the Catholic Church that I've seen in the last couple of weeks, so it shouldn't be hard to find. The takeaway is that this chapter in this story is, to me, now a big test. Not for Catholics, because if you're still a Catholic, I think you're failing the test. But it's a test for non-Catholics right now. And if anybody was to give you a hard time, if you do choose to pick it, just look them right in the eye and ask them, which side of this sign do you think Jesus would be standing on right now?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm in the unique and very enjoyable position where both Christopher Hitchens and Jesus Christ would be quite happy with what I'm doing. So I'm going to keep doing it.
There you go. Can't beat that, I don't think.
Oh, and you can't shut me up.
I'm going to throw one caveat at you, because as the flying spaghetti monster as my witness, this was thrown at me the other day. I used very similar, which side would Jesus be on? The guy goes, I don't follow what's in the Bible. I only follow what is revealed to me to God in my dreams.
Sweet dreams.
Yeah, take that as you will. Oh, and this guy is supposedly a Christian.
Well, then God is revealing some very weird stuff to me.
He apparently wants me to go to school naked.
All right. There you go. Well, you can always wear those awesome knit shorts of yours.
Yes, my crocheted swimwear. Yes.
Yes. A friend of ours crocheted him a nice set of swim trunks.
Yeah.
Nice.
How many colors are in those things?
A couple. Yeah, mostly blue and white. Try to blend in.
Oh, are you a Maple Leafs fan?
Yeah, maybe that must be it. She knew.
That must be it. Yeah, you're a Leafs fan. I don't know much about hockey. I just know that they don't usually win anything. But your fans are dedicated.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Beth, where do we find you?
Easiest way is on Twitter, Dune998. That connects to both Facebook and to my blog. Well, no longer to Facebook. It's Dune now. We're talking about
Twitter stopped doing it.
Yeah. But you can find my blog through Twitter, and it's Havoc and Chaos, and it's on Blogger, where I post about abuses within the church, not just the Catholic Church. I haven't done any in a few days because I was trying to take a wee step back. Didn't quite work. But yeah. And if you look for me on Facebook, it's Beth A. Hambridge. And please note that it's due to the show, because if not, I will ignore you.
All right. And Morgan, where do we find you?
All right. Well, you can find me on the Bi-Skeptical podcast of Trav Mamone on iTunes, Spreaker, and Stitcher. And Tris Mamone. And then you can also find me on Twitter now. I'm back on there at Mostring, Mostring. And then you can find me on Facebook, Morgan L. Stringer. And you can find me on Instagram at the same Twitter handle, Mostring.
Awesome. And I'm betting there'd be some corgi pictures on Instagram, yeah?
Yes, there will be. Yes, lots of corgi pictures.
Hedgehogs?
Corgis and hedgehogs.
Yes. I never realized how cute those little hedgehogs guys are.
They're pretty cute.
How do you hold those, though? Don't they, stick you in the hand?
Well, I have, they stay in they have little miniature slumber bags. So I usually will hold them in that and just kind of have them in my lap or something. And sometimes they'll come out and they'll have their quills down when they're comfortable, and they'll, run up sometimes and They really love the smell of my hair for some reason.
Aw.
So I have to kind of keep them from getting tangled in my hair because I'm like, don't freak out because you become a spiky ball in my hair.
Could you imagine you go to the salon and you're like, yes, can you help detangle my poor hedgehog from my head?
Jesus.
That's something that would happen to me, just saying.
Well, your hair is so damn long.
Ah, well. Yeah, Scott might have some trouble with a hedgehog too in the hair.
Yeah.
His is
Yeah.
curlier than mine, though.
I don't have enough to spare. I still look like a founding father when I have my hair in a low ponytail, so.
Actually, if I did it just right, I might be able to use the hedgehog as a brush.
Possibly. I don't think the hedgehog would like that very much, but.
Probably not, no, but oh well. Anyway, speaking of cute little critters, I'm getting a kitten soon. Yay. But yes, if you go on my Facebook, there might be a couple of really cute little kitten pictures, but he's only 3 weeks old, so we don't get him for a little while yet because he's a tiny little guy. But anyway, you can find us here next week, of course, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Don't have anything specific planned yet, but we will by then. You just wait. And of course, you can also hear me read the Quran, so you don't have to at www.fullquranic.com. And I'm on Facebook, and I don't tweet very much, but I am on Twitter at Heretic Woman. I do have an Instagram, but I don't really use it. I only got it because when we had the apostate prophet on a few months ago, he was primarily on Twitter, or on Instagram, so I got Instagram to communicate with him. And then his lovely Muslim fans got him banned off of Twitter, or Instagram, not long after that. So I don't really go on there anymore. But I'm there if you ever want to look. So I think that about does it. Oh, actually, one other thing I wanted to mention. So Brian, who was hanging out with us in the chat there, and the lobster popped in for a few minutes there. I did see as well, and we had Dan in there too. But Brian is also an author, and I thought I'd just take a minute to mention his book, which is Atheism, Religion, and Life, A Layman's Perspective by Brian Hinckley. It's a good read. It's easy read, good for, as I say, from a layman's perspective. So he's got some good stuff in there. Definitely check that out if you want a good read to do with atheism. He's one of our local folks, and he did a really good job on it. So, yeah, go read.
Why hasn't he been in our show then?
Because I don't think he has the equipment to. Because I remember talking to him about it ages ago.
Oh, okay.
But well, you know what, Brian, get yourself a microphone or something. We'll do that sometime. But anyway, until next week, we will leave you with the Human Creed for Mankind, and we will see you then. And I'll hit the right button this week.
I know the truth and power of reason and of rational thinking, and I will use them to my advantage. I know the truth and power of educating myself and of expanding my intellectual boundaries, and I will educate myself. I know the truth and power of vanquishing ignorance, and I will do so whenever the opportunity presents itself. I know the truth and power of morality without supervision, and of true and accurate righteousness. I know the truth and power of obliterating tyranny, be it intellectual, emotional, or philosophical, and will work toward that goal whenever and however possible. I know the truth and power of human ingenuity. I know the truth and power of human compassion, and I will be mindful of the welfare of others. I know the truth and power of equality and fairness for all living things. I know the truth and power of the importance of our families, our friends, and our fellow men and women. I know the truth and power of human stewardship of our lands, our waters, and our skies. and I will try to act to preserve our environment. I know the truth and power of the sciences of mathematics, physics, and of chemistry, and of the important role of these disciplines in understanding the workings of this cosmos. I know the truth and power of the rejection of all notions or beliefs that reside in the supernatural or the superstitious, and of those notions or beliefs that we are not supposed to be able to explain. And I know that these rejections are necessary for humankind's survival. I am a human being with a free mind, liberated from irrational influence and from unreasonable dogma.